Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to find that the credit card in your wallet is useless. Imagine that the bank apps on your phone simply don't load, and the cash you have tucked in your pocket is all you might see for a month. It sounds like the plot of a dystopian movie, doesn't it? But for a generation of people, our great-grandparents, this wasn't a movie. It was Tuesday. We live in an era of intoxicating abundance. If we want food, we tap a screen and it appears. If we want entertainment, we stream it instantly. If we want a new outfit, it arrives at our doorstep in 24 hours. We are the most comfortable generation in history, and yet statistically, we are also one of the most financially fragile. We are drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, and constantly chasing the next raise, convinced that more money is the only solution to our problems. But what if I told you that the secret to true wealth isn't earning more? What if the secret was buried in the dust of the 1930s? The Great Depression was a time of immense suffering, yes, but it was also a forge that created the most financially resilient generation in history. These were people who could stretch a dollar until it screamed. They didn't just survive, many of them slowly, quietly built foundations of wealth that supported their families for decades. They understood a fundamental truth that we have forgotten: you cannot outturn a bad spending habit. Today, we are going to travel back in time. We are going to strip away the convenience fees, the subscription services, and the disposable culture of 2025. We are going to unearth 10 specific, practical, and powerful money habits from the Depression era that we desperately need to bring back. These aren't just tips on how to save a few pennies. This is a philosophy of life. This is about reclaiming your independence from a system designed to keep you broke. Let's talk about the first habit, and it is the overarching philosophy of the entire era. It was a rhyme that was etched into the minds of every child and adult in the 1930s. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. In our modern world, if a toaster stops working, we buy a new one. If a shirt loses a button, it gets pushed to the back of the closet and we buy a replacement. We are a replacement culture. The Depression era was a maintenance culture. Use it up meant you didn't throw away the toothpaste tube until you had flattened it with a rolling pin to get the last smear out. It meant adding a little water to the ketchup bottle to get the last of the sauce. It sounds trivial, almost silly to us, but think about the psychology behind it. It is a total rejection of waste. When you treat every resource as finite, you stop bleeding money on things you already own. Wear it out meant that clothes were worn until the fabric literally gave way. And even then, they weren't trash, they were rags or quilt patches. Today, the average piece of clothing is worn 7 times before it is discarded. 7 times, that is a hemorrhage of wealth. By simply respecting the life cycle of the things you own, you step off the consumer treadmill. Make it do is the habit of creativity. It's looking at a problem and solving it with what you have on hand rather than buying a solution. It's using vinegar to clean the windows instead of buying a $6 bottle of blue liquid. And the final line, do without, is the most powerful financial weapon in existence. It is the ability to say no to your own impulses. It is the understanding that you will not die if you don't have the latest gadget or the trendy shoes. When you can be content with doing without, you become unmarketable to advertisers, you become free. This brings us to the second habit, one that has been almost entirely lost to the convenience economy: cooking from scratch and the victory garden mentality. Somewhere in the last 50 years, we were sold a lie. The lie was that cooking is hard, time-consuming, and that our time is too valuable to be spent in the kitchen. So we started buying time. We buy pre-chopped vegetables, pre-made sauces, frozen dinners, and DoorDash. Here is the math that the food industry doesn't want you to know. When you buy a pre-made meal or eat at a restaurant, you are not paying for food. You are paying for labor, marketing, packaging, and real estate. The actual cost of the ingredients is a fraction of the price. During the Depression, buying a loaf of bread was a luxury. Buying flour, yeast, and water was a necessity. A grandmother in 1932 could take a cheap cut of tough meat, some root vegetables she grew in the yard, and some flour, and turn it into a stew and biscuits that could feed a family of 6 for pennies. We need to bring back the ingredient household. An ingredient household is one where you don't buy snacks, you buy the building blocks of food: flour, rice, beans, potatoes, eggs, milk, spices. When you cook from scratch, you are effectively paying yourself the labor cost that you would otherwise pay to a restaurant. Let's say you order a pizza for $25. The ingredients for that pizza: flour for dough, a can of tomatoes, some cheese, cost maybe $3. If you make it yourself, you have paid yourself $22 for the hour it took to make it. That is a tax-free wage. And let's not forget the garden. In the Depression, lawns were a waste of space. If there was dirt, there was food. You don't need a farm. A few pots of herbs on a windowsill or tomato plants on a balcony is a printing press for money. It connects you to the source of your sustenance and breaks the reliance on grocery store inflation. Habit number 3 is a lost art form that is visually practically invisible today: mending and repairing. Walk into a fast fashion store today, pick up a t-shirt, feel the fabric, it is paper thin, check the stitching, it is loose. These clothes are engineered to fail. They are designed to survive the journey from the factory to the store and maybe 3 washes after that. This is planned obsolescence applied to our wardrobes. The Depression era viewed clothing as an asset, not a consumable. A good wool coat was an investment that was expected to last 10 or 15 years, but it only lasted that long because of the needle and thread. Darning socks, patching knees, sewing on buttons, hemming trousers, these were basic life skills as essential as reading and writing. Today we call them hobbies. We need to reframe them as wealth-building strategies. Think about the cost per wear. If you buy a cheap pair of boots for $50 and they last one winter, your cost is $50 per year. If you buy a high-quality pair of leather boots for $200 and you care for the leather and have the soles replaced by a cobbler for $40 every few years, those boots might last you 10 years. The cheap boots cost you $500 over a decade. The quality boots with maintenance cost you roughly $300 or $400, but you walked in comfort and style the whole time. Mending is an act of rebellion. When you sit down to sew a button back onto a shirt instead of throwing it in the donation bin, you're telling the fashion industry that they cannot have your money today. You are extending the life of your capital. Now let's move to habit number 4, which is perhaps the most controversial in our digital age: using cash instead of credit. In the 1930s, credit was scarce and debt was terrifying. If you didn't have the bills in your hand, you didn't buy the item. It was that simple. Today we live in a world of abstraction. We tap a phone or insert a plastic chip and the transaction feels weightless. We don't see the money leaving. We don't feel the loss. There is a psychological concept called the pain of paying. When you hand over a $100 bill, you physically feel a sense of loss. Your brain registers it as negative. It makes you question the purchase. Do I really want this thing more than I want this $100 bill? Credit cards numb that pain. They separate the pleasure of buying from the pain of paying by 30 days. This anesthesia causes us to spend, on average, 15% to 20% more than we would if we used cash. We need to bring back the tangible economy. I'm not saying you have to keep your life savings under a mattress, but for your discretionary spending, groceries, entertainment, clothes, try using cash. Go to the ATM, take out your budget for the week, put it in an envelope. When the envelope is empty, you stop spending. There is a clarity that comes with cash that no budgeting app can replicate. When you open your wallet and see only 3 ones and a 5, you make different choices at the grocery store. You put back the premium brand cookies, you skip the soda, you stick to the list. That discipline builds wealth because it forces you to live within reality, not within your credit limit. Habit number 5 is about how we fill our time: community entertainment. If you look at a typical household budget today, a huge chunk of it goes to being entertained. Streaming services, cable, video games, movie tickets, concerts, bars, restaurants. We pay to be distracted. During the Depression, entertainment was a do-it-yourself project. It had to be free. This gave rise to the front porch culture. People sat outside, they talked to neighbors, they played cards, they played instruments. Potlucks were the norm because no one could afford to host a full dinner party alone, but everyone could bring one dish. This wasn't just about saving money, it was about connection. Modern entertainment isolates us. We sit in dark rooms staring at screens, alone together. Depression-era entertainment connected people. We can bring this back. Instead of meeting friends for dinner and drinks, which can easily cost $50 or $100, host a game night. Invite friends over for a potluck. Go for a hike. Utilize the public library, which is the greatest free resource in our society. When you realize that fun doesn't have to cost money, you unlock a massive amount of your income. You realize that the best parts of life, laughter, conversation, competition, nature, are not things that can be bought on Amazon. Habit number 6 is a shift in professional mindset: the jack-of-all-trades DIY ethic. We live in a world of hyperspecialization. We are good at our one specific job and we outsource everything else. If the sink leaks, we call a plumber. If the walls need painting, we hire a painter. If the car makes a noise, we go to the mechanic. In the 1930s, you couldn't afford to call a professional. You were the professional. If something broke, you figured out how to fix it. Men and women alike were handy. They knew basic carpentry, basic mechanics, basic plumbing. Today, we have YouTube. We have access to the sum of human knowledge in our pockets. There is absolutely no excuse for not knowing how to fix a running toilet or change your own oil. Every time you learn a new skill, you are saving yourself the convenience premium. A plumber might charge $150 just to show up. If you can fix the issue with a $5 part in a 20-minute video tutorial, you have just earned $145 for 20 minutes of work. That is an hourly rate of $435. Stop being afraid of manual labor. Stop being afraid of making a mistake. The confidence you get from fixing your own home is worth just as much as the money you save. It makes you feel capable. It makes you the master of your environment rather than a guest in your own house. Habit number 7 is perhaps the most iconic image of the era: scrappy reusing. My grandmother used to wash aluminum foil. To us, that seems insane. Foil is cheap, you ball it up and throw it away. But to her, that foil was a resource. She saved glass jars from jelly and pickles to use for storage. She cut up old towels to make cleaning rags so she never had to buy paper towels. We are addicted to single-use products: paper plates, plastic forks, paper towels, Ziploc bags, Swiffer pads. We literally buy things with the intention of throwing them away immediately. It is like flushing money down the toilet. Reusing is a mindset shift. It's looking at a glass jar not as trash but as a free Tupperware container. It's looking at an old t-shirt not as garbage but as a year's supply of dusting cloths. Let's talk about paper towels for a second. The average American family spends hundreds of dollars a year on paper towels. If you buy a pack of microfiber cloths for $20 and wash them, they last for years. That is hundreds of dollars staying in your bank account, compounding over time. It's not about being a hoarder, it's about not being wasteful. It's about recognizing value where others see trash. Habit number 8 is bartering and community exchange. When money was scarce, people traded value for value. If you were a good carpenter and your neighbor raised chickens, you fixed his coop and he gave you eggs. The IRS wasn't involved. No sales tax was paid. It was pure, efficient commerce. Today, we are awkward about money with our friends and neighbors. We don't want to owe anyone favors, but building a network of skills is a form of wealth. If you are great at graphic design and your friend is a personal trainer, swap services. You design his logo, he writes you a workout plan. Both of you get professional-grade services for $0. This requires building relationships. It requires knowing your neighbors. It requires swallowing your pride and saying, "Hey, I can't afford to pay you, but I can offer this in exchange." You will be surprised at how many people are willing to trade. It builds trust, it builds community, and it keeps cash in your pocket. Habit number 9 is the aversion to keeping up with the Joneses. This is a mental habit. In the 1920s, the roaring 20s, everyone was showing off. Then the crash hit. Suddenly, the Joneses were broke too. There was no shame in having an old car because everyone had an old car. There was no shame in wearing patched clothes because everyone wore patched clothes. We need to recapture that lack of shame. We live in a highlight reel culture. We scroll through Instagram and see vacations we can't afford, cars we can't lease, and houses we can't buy. And we feel inadequate, so we spend money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. The Depression mindset was focused on survival and family, not perception. You have to reach a point where you simply do not care what other people think of your financial choices. If you drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic while your friends are leasing brand new BMWs, you are not losing, you are winning, because the guy in the BMW is likely drowning in payments while you are stacking cash. Status is a game with no winners. Opt out of the game, be proud of your frugality, wear it like a badge of honor. And finally, habit number 10, delayed gratification. This is the cornerstone of all wealth building. In the 1930s, buy now, pay later wasn't really an option for most. If you wanted a radio, you saved for the radio. You put coins in a jar every week, you watched the pile grow. By the time you had enough money to buy the radio, two things happened. First, you really appreciated that radio. You took care of it because you knew exactly how much sacrifice went into it. Second, sometimes by the time you saved the money, you realized you didn't actually want the radio that much, and you decided to keep the cash instead. Credit destroys this process. Credit allows us to have the reward without the effort. It short-circuits our brain's reward system. It makes us impatient children. Bringing back delayed gratification means setting a rule. If I want something over $100, I have to wait 30 days. If I still want it in 30 days, I can buy it. Most of the time, the urge will pass. The dopamine hit of the want fades and your logic returns. This habit alone, waiting, will save you thousands of dollars a year in impulse purchases. It forces you to be intentional. So why do these habits build wealth faster than earning more money? It comes down to tax efficiency and the leak in the bucket theory. Imagine your finances are a bucket. Earning money is pouring water into the top. Spending is the holes in the bottom. When you earn an extra $1,000 at your job, you don't take home $1,000. You pay federal tax, state tax, FICA tax. You might only take home $700. Then that money is eaten away by inflation. But when you save $1,000 by cooking at home, fixing your car, and not buying new clothes, that is $1,000 of net worth. You don't pay taxes on money you don't spend. A penny saved is actually worth more than a penny earned because of taxes. Furthermore, if you have a high income but high expenses, a bucket with huge holes, you are not wealthy, you are just a funnel for money to pass through, you are vulnerable. If the income stops, the water runs out instantly. But if you have low expenses, a bucket with no holes, you don't need a massive stream of water to fill it up. You are resilient, you can survive a job loss, you can take risks, you can retire early. The Depression-era generation didn't save because they wanted to be rich, they saved because they wanted to be safe. They understood that margin, the gap between what you make and what you spend, is the only thing that protects you from the chaos of the world. We have a choice. We can continue running on the hamster wheel of consumerism, working harder and harder to buy things that end up in a landfill, constantly stressed, constantly one paycheck away from disaster. Or we can look back. We can learn from the people who stared into the abyss of economic collapse and didn't blink. We can adopt their grit, their creativity, and their respect for resources. Cooking a meal from scratch isn't just about dinner, it's about independence. Mending a shirt isn't just about fabric, it's about rejecting disposability. Saving cash isn't just about hoarding, it's about freedom. These habits are not a step backward, they are the ultimate life hack. They are the path to a life where you own your stuff instead of your stuff owning you. So challenge yourself, pick one of these habits this week, bake bread, sew a button, leave the credit card at home, feel the weight of the cash in your pocket. You might find that living like it's 1930 is the best way to secure your future in 2025. Wealth isn't a number on a screen. Wealth is the peace of mind that comes from knowing you have enough and that you are capable of making do with what you have. That is a lesson worth bringing back.